Today, guys, I'm going to show you how you can turn this into this. And my link is in the description if you want to go ahead and print this file for yourself today. As well as my upcoming projects are on Colts 3D, including some big ones that rhyme with Schmibberty Prime and Novak Dinosaur. All right, let's get painting. I've started printing in ABS just due to it being exactly what Legos are made out of, but it's stronger and it's more flexible. And if you print it properly, it will go ahead and provide even more precise results. And great thing about ABS is you can go ahead and vapor chamber smooth it. So I was just going to show you a quick little process how to do that on my Frank Horrigan character. So I just bought this little, I don't know, cooking rack or anything like that. And I put tinfoil on it because the holes or the lines were too big that parts might fall through, and you don't want the parts to be actually touching any acetone. You just want the vapors. So get a nice little hole like that. I almost skipped a step. You're going to take some paper towels first. This is your acetone. You want acetone for this with ABS. Go ahead and lay the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket like this. Now these buckets are made out of HDPE plastic, which means acetone will not warp them or melt them. Over time though, it might reduce the structural integrity of this, which doesn't really matter since these buckets are only about $5 each. So once we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and take the acetone cap off and just sparingly drizzle over. So just like that. You kind of just want the whole entire paper towel to be kind of soaked, but not submerged in acetone. All right, and once you've got the acetone nice and soaking the bottom of that, try and place your tray, I guess, as level as possible. It doesn't have to be perfectly level, but the biggest thing is you do not want your pieces touching each other inside the vapor chamber, because even in just 15 minutes, they will melt each other. Other than that, you do not have to be very careful about how you place them, just so that they do not touch each other. Now, is this a very janky, cheap way to do a vapor chamber? Yes. There's much better ways you can do vapor chambers, but this is just the easiest and the cheapest. So just something like that. So you can see the plastic's touching the HDPE, but it's not actually touching the parts itself. It'll be fine. Set your timer for 15 minutes, then come back and check on it. And if it's smooth enough to what you like, you went ahead and just acetone vapor chamber smoothed your part. Now this is why I absolutely adore using acetone vapor chamber smoothing as a method instead of sanding miniatures. Because if you do it correctly, you do not miss out on any details, and you get a resin-like or even injection molded-like finish. Now this is why I like using ABS for Lego figures, because boom, perfect fit, just like that. Now keep in mind, do not put the connecting pieces that I include in the files in the acetone vapor chamber, just the part itself. Don't do it too long. This is roughly 10 minutes of a non-heated chamber and then a roughly 10 minutes of the heated chamber. And you get pretty much incredible results every time if you do it correctly. So, without further ado, let's get it ready to paint. Now, just like I showed you in my previous video, which bear with me, I'm reworking all this to make it a nice format that you guys will enjoy. I actually like to put these connecting pegs inside my figure before I go ahead and paint it. So when it comes to figures that have super high level detail, you don't want to be touching this and moving this part around when you're painting the figure. So it's nice to have this taped off, this little connector peg that I'm holding on to, so that way you can hold and pose and move the pieces around as you paint them without actually affecting the visible area of your piece. So time-lapse time. If you remember in the last video, when I painted the Deathclaw here, I did this slightly different technique, but I decided going forward that this would be the best way and the simplest way for all of you watching at home to get pretty much professional quality miniatures very easily. If you see here how I did that is I basically wrapped the tape around the connector peg that's inside his head, then pushed that down into the head hole. You know, none of this is going to be seen at all, but this is a great way to go ahead and hold both of these pieces together and get the underside of his armor, which will be seen. All right, here's the pieces all laid out in my little mini paint booth here. Keep in mind, I rolled the tape underneath here, if you see this. That way, this doesn't move around at all when you go ahead and spray it. Those ones are heavy enough that it should be fine, but I might hold on to that one just to be safe. I'll go ahead and show you my little makeshift paint booth here. I like to go ahead and purge some of this. Now, keep in mind, if you did everything correctly, there's going to be very, very, very little layer lines on there, and you want to use just a little bit of primer. Honestly, just enough of primer to go ahead and get the paint that I'm going to put on it to just stick. No more primer than that. But go ahead and purge it. Just from front to back, because this is going to get overspray on those, so front to back. Go ahead and let that dry for like 15 minutes. And I know I said I would wear gloves in the last video. I'm sorry, maybe next video. All right, once you have the first coat of primer done, ideally you only need one coat of primer, especially when you're working at this level of detail. And from the looks of it, we're only gonna need the one coat, which is great. But always go ahead and double check your part. Now keep in mind, I insert it into the Legos so that way there's no tolerance issues after it's painted. And I keep it inserted until I'm finished painting it. Always have some scrap bricks around that you're, okay, you know, throwing away. Or at least just reusing. And especially with a primer like this, it's pretty easy to come off. So you can always take the primer off the blocks after you've printed them. But that's why I like using blocks like that to go ahead and put my figures on a stand. So I'm pretty happy with that as it is. Now, from here on forward, I recommend you go ahead and, you know, hand paint it and everything. But I'm going to cheat a little bit. So I'm going to take this guy right out of the head. We're not going to touch the torso anymore with spray paint because of Frank Horrigan's colors. Same with the legs. We're done with the legs. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this saber off of here. And we're left with all of the parts I want green. And I want them green because I personally have a nice army green that I like for super mutant colors. Not everybody likes this for super mutants. Some people like a cartoonish green. I like a more realistic green. And you'll see why for the skin tones. And remember, like I said, anytime before you use any sort of aerosolized can to paint figures like this, especially high detail ones, always make sure you shook it good. I did. Sometimes put it in front of a heater or something if it is really cold. Mine's aren't cold, but purge it. This gets any large chunk of paint that might still be stuck in there from going on your model. Now I'm going to try and be selective with this. I just want that army green inside that neck area. So I'm not even going to really paint that part too much. The whole point of me making these figures and this YouTube channel is to show you that you can go ahead and get ultra level quality figures painted on the cheap and printed on the cheap. Keep in mind, this was printed on a $250 FDM printer, the ELEGOO Centauri Carbon. I'm absolutely blown away by this printer. And keep in mind, I have fine-tuned a lot of these details, and I'll leave a link in the description below to the video that I used to fine-tune my 3D printer perfectly, because each printer is different. So let's mix that paint and get it into the time. What I like to do, and nobody's told me this, it's just personally how I've found the best results. Start with your gray, mix in just a dash of black, That almost ended poorly. We'll add a little more black to it, not too much. Just a tap. I literally want to touch the paint and pull away. All right, good. Here's the trick to gunmetal gray, in my opinion. That's using gold flake in it instead. This metallic gold by Deco Art. I think this was $5 on its own. That was all like $5, and then the two big containers were $5 combined. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in a generous amount, but not too much. Now here's how I go about thinning acrylic paint. Now the cheap stuff needs to be thinned. That is the biggest difference between the expensive stuff and the cheap stuff. High quality model paints, you know, they're not gonna need to be thin. They're gonna be pretty much perfect texture first go, or they're intentionally meant to be thinned after the part, like you buy that paint specifically wanting to thin it. When you buy cheap acrylic like this, there's no instructions, there's no nothing. But water works just fine to go ahead and thin the paint so it doesn't clump up on your person. You'll want to go ahead and mix this in a tiny little cup or a little dish, or even the top of a spray paint can's cup. That way it's, you know, nice and neat. Even for little model paints like this, maybe I should have done that. I like to have it kind of spread out like this so I can really see the true reflectiveness of the color and make sure I'm getting the shine I want to get out of a matte paint. So I go in on things like this where there's a lot of, you know, sharp edges and surfaces that aren't really easy to go over with a large flat brush. But if you've got something like a Super Mutant Behemoth where, you know, the geometry is more squared off, it's more Lego Hulk Big Fig style. This is less Lego Hulk Big Fig style and more my own creation. Tiny brushes like this that are slightly thicker are good. Now, why we want this is because when we brush, we're not going to be going down at it like this. That's only for like cracks and crevices. We're just going to be layering it across just kind of like that. And we look like on this piece, you can see the color needs any more correction, and I have to say that I probably need to go ahead and switch up my gunmetal gray just a little bit. I like this color for his armor pauldrons though. I went ahead and I threw that paint in a little container, so I took my own advice, and then I threw in some purple, blue, gray, and some more black. I think this should give us that good gunmetal blackish gray look for his body that I want. There's Frank Horrigan in game. There's the main reference I was using. I'm gonna mix the two of them together. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the difference in paints. I went ahead and painted this left thigh. And there's the color of the old gray I had that I used on the pauldrons, which is accurate to the reference model. And like Bob Ross says, there are no mistakes, only happy little accidents, because that worked out perfectly. I got exactly the color I wanted for the pauldrons. So, and I got exactly the gunmetal gray that I wanted for the body. And like I told you, it's as simple as add more purple, add more blue, add more gold, add more black, until you are satisfied. You literally just rinse and repeat. I'm about done, and I'm about ready to go ahead and throw the clear coat on this. The literal last thing is this American flag. Majority of these tiny details I did, you guys don't need to do to make a quality figure, make it look nice, make it look displayable, or even just have it with your Lego collection in a set, or rebuild, you know, a scene from Fallout 1 or Fallout 2. It's pretty simple geometry, and it's shapes, it's Lego, you know. You can do whatever colors you'd like. I just went ahead and went extra detailed on it simply because I sell these models online. Like I said, guys, you do not need expensive paint at all. I did this all with the cheapest paint possible and mixed it with water. Just take your time, go slowly, and get in there and get in that easy detail. Keep your hands steady like this, braced against the table or some solid surface, and you literally just feather it back and forth. If you do want to do these tiny details, you feather it back and forth, and I'll show you just how I'm going to do this American flag right here. This American flag is not even, you know, 3 millimeters in width. Just gonna feather the blue on there. Feather the blue on there. Of course, since, you know, it doesn't have to be super detailed, I would need a microscopic brush to go ahead and put stars on there. I am not that skilled, but I am skilled enough. I'm gonna go ahead and add some white stripes on it. See how little paint I got on the tip of this thing? One strip. We're gonna stabilize my hand here because I'm about to lose it. Now I went over it with the white lines, and obviously you can see the white lines aren't straight. You could leave it like this, and that clearly wouldn't be good enough for, you know, some pro Warhammer level guy. But what I like to do is just take a little bit of red, and because the background's red, you can kind of control your brush a little more and just clean up the edges just a little bit. I'm hoping you can see that. I'm barely feathering it. I think that's as good as I. If you guys have a better way you suggest I can do little tiny flags or emblems or stuff like that in the future, I would appreciate it. But I'm gonna call it done, and let's go ahead and throw some clear coat on this guy. All right, guys, I apologize. The audio in this clip might be a little bit bad, and the lighting is pitch black. It took me a little longer than I thought it would, but because I really wanted to make it look nice for you guys. So I'm using a 2X satin clear coat from Rust-Oleum. It's the same exact stuff I used on the Deathclaw. I love it because it really mimics the satin sheen of Lego without, you know, looking fake. So we'll start with the tiny piece first. Okay. It's okay if there's overspray since it's all clear coat, but the thing is you just want to avoid it so there's no clumps in the paint. So always purge. Okay. All right, that's done. Does not need much at all. All of these had dried for about 5 minutes or so. Go ahead and remove the Lego pieces, and you can remove some of the tape, okay? But we'll go ahead and do a bottom coat of clear coat just on the feet. One very light clear coat so it does not affect the tolerances of actually putting this piece down on a Lego brick. All right, now that the clear coat is on, we can go ahead and start taking off some of this paint. The key here is if it's been, you know, 2 to 3 minutes outside and it's cold outside, go ahead and bring it inside, put it on some sort of stone surface or painter's tape, something it won't stick to and rip off. Biggest thing is you don't want it to fully harden yet. So that's why I say, you know, 10 minutes of drying before you take this off. Because if you let this paint fully harden and you go ahead and take this painter's tape off, either the painter's tape is not all the way going to come off and you have to like piecemeal it, or it's going to take some paint with it. So you want the paint to be slightly soft. Now what is that? If it's soft but not sticky, go ahead and take the painter's tape off using an X-Acto knife or the trimmers that came included with your 3D printer, whatever's comfortable for you. All right, now that the painter's tape is fully off, this is gonna be the part that takes some patience. If you ever want to go ahead and put this thing back together or disassemble it, wait 12 hours after you've put the clear coat on, just to be safe. You know, you could probably call it at 6 hours or so, but let it fully harden, or else you are literally just gonna end up gluing your character together. Keep in mind, obviously it'll look great, but it defeats the purpose of me making a Lego style Fallout Frank Horrigan. One last thing before I forget, of course, in the reference, he has 2 wrist blades, but in the video games, he is almost always carrying a minigun or a laser Gatling gun. Of course, I went ahead and printed this, but disclaimer, this is not my minigun. This is a remix, so this is gonna go ahead and be free on my Colts 3D page. I went ahead and I just shortened it so it would fit better in minifigures' hands. But if anybody knows the original creator of this minigun, please let me know. I can't find them at all. So once again, I didn't design the minigun. This will be free. So I will see you in the morning with the close-up. And that's it, guys. I'm absolutely in love with how this came out. Definitely one of my favorites I've done to date. There's plenty more I've done that you guys haven't even seen yet. But tell me how I did in the comments below and what you want to see next. I'm pretty sure I kept Frank Horrigan dang faithful while making him Lego.
You've gotten a lot farther than you should have, but then you hadn't met Frank Horrigan either. Your ride's over, Mutie. Time to die. You've gotten a lot farther than you should have. Then you haven't met Frank Horrigan either. Your ride's over, Mutie. Time to die.
Yeah, boy. I'm available for voiceover work if anybody wants to hire me. I can do incredibly high voices as well as
super low. Lower than Frank Horrigan even.
Smeagol, Gollum, pretty much anything in between. So with that, yeah. This is why fine-tuning your printer is very important. Look at that. Comes right off the supports. Boom.